Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Secure Talk. Secure Talk is brought to you by Adequest, your cybersecurity and compliance partner. My name is Mark Schreiner, and I'll be your host for this episode of Secure Talk. Today, we're going to be talking with the CEO and president of Ntirety, Mr. Emil Sayegh. Emil, how are you today?
Doing great. How about you?
Pretty good. I mean, it's a beautiful summer sunny day here in the Pacific Northwest. Where are you located? All I can see is a blurry background, so I have no clues at all.
I'll unblur it here in a second. I am in Austin, Texas, and actually today is a bit of a rainy day. We've had a very mild summer, surprisingly, and it's been we're getting rain almost every day, contrary to probably a lot of areas of the country. But it's been a very mild summer, rain every day, and today's no different. But I'm sure it'll get warmer later in the week.
I think that says something about the world we're living in, that people are happy to get rain, right? Because I'm from the Seattle area, and we, usually are always complaining about the rain. We haven't had any all summer, and things are super, super dry here, and makes everybody kind of nervous. I got to ask you, what is going on in that part of Texas that it seems like so many people want to move there?
Yeah, I mean, look, Austin is a great city, and it is, I would say, pretty different than the rest of Texas. It's hilly. The weather is, very mild. It's much less humid than other parts of Texas, and there's every possible type of nature other than desert here in Austin. It's like I said, super hilly, lots of lakes, lots of water. And the business climate is very pro-business. So it has that, perfect combination of being kind of a hip town, live music capital of the world, plus, a mecca for high tech. And you have a, very prestigious university here, University of Texas, that has about 55,000 students, that cranks out a lot of talent, and a lot of that talent wants to stay in that city, basically. So, I am one of those. I went to the University of Texas and stayed here ever since. So, yeah.
That's excellent. I mean, there have been a couple of very high-profile entertainers and business people who are, departing California and going straight to Austin. So you must have something really special going on there.
Not the least being Joe Rogan, right? Another
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think
competitor to your podcast, right?
Well, I like to think of him as a collaborator. That's funny. Easy. Yeah. Well, hey, before we get started talking about security, can you tell us a little bit about what Ntirety does?
Absolutely. Ntirety is a company that is focused on the entire security process, and specifically compliance security. And we have roots as a managed services provider. We've been around for a good 20 years. We're the product of the merger of two great companies in the space, which is Hostway and Hosting. We merged about 2.5 years ago, and rebranded the company as Ntirety. And currently, we are the premier, I would say, comprehensive security provider in the space that is focused on mid-market enterprises. And we encompass everything from managed security services to managed services as well. So starting from the grounds up, from monitoring, patching, disaster recovery, backup, database administration, all the way to the overall security of the infrastructure of customers, of enterprise, mostly mid-market enterprise customers.
Okay, so let me ask you this: if I was a mid-market enterprise customer, why would I look at a company like Ntirety versus one of the big players, going direct to one of the big three?
Sure. I mean, what we are seeing is that there's very few companies that are willing to assume the entire security spectrum, the entire security process from beginning to end, which would include compliance. And we are actually that company that offers a single neck to choke, single point of contact for the entire suite. What you are seeing with a lot of the big players that they specialize, maybe in one point solution or another, or they outsource their SOCs. They will, maybe custom build something specifically for you. Whereas, our solution is a comprehensive solution. It encompasses all the managed security and the managed services, right, from the grounds up. And we're going to maybe hopefully touch on that, why it's important not to bifurcate infrastructure from security, and why security needs to be built up from the grounds up. But we feel that security needs to build in every layer of the IT infrastructure, and this is essentially what Ntirety brings. Plus, you got the flexibility that we bring in with 20 years of experience that a lot of the big three don't bring that flexibility. They're very much regimented and whatnot. Whereas we're bringing the flexibility, we're bringing the agility that a mid-market enterprise ourselves bring to the party.
So for our listeners who don't really understand why an organization would outsource security, because traditionally a lot of companies, they want to manage everything in-house, right? And when you talk especially about security and compliance, what's the advantage of outsourcing?
Absolutely. How much time do we have? So I'll try to be brief. Look, the advantage of security is that you're getting a surgeon that's done that operation every day, 20 times a day, right? Do you want to go get your hernia repaired by somebody who does it every once in a while, or, sometimes does a hernia repair, or do you want somebody that does, 20 hernias a day and have seen every single permutation and every single issue that can arise, right? And this is exactly why you want to outsource your security to somebody who does this on a daily basis. We manage the security of over 1,500 clients and some of the top tier companies in the space. Some Fortune 50 companies, but like I said, most of our customers are in that mid-market range. And this is what we do. When we see a zero-day threat, immediately we take that and propagate the defenses for all our clients. An enterprise company may or may not see that zero-day threat because they're not managing a bunch of other environments. We're managing environments from healthcare to fintech to industrial to low tech to education, right? So, and the educational institutions. So we are likely to start seeing these zero-day threats in one of those segments, one of those customers immediately. Once we understand what that threat, we propagate the defenses for across all, and very, very unlikely that maybe an enterprise will get lucky and be able to identify something, but they're focused on their environment. They're not aware of all the threats, all the entry points that hackers are developing as we speak to essentially infiltrate. So then, an enterprise also may not have the budget to have a 24/7 team of level ones, level two, level threes that are specializing in security and defenses, right? And they may have one person that's on call, maybe two people, maybe one person on staff, but not a full team. For us, we have 3 SOCs in the United States, all staffed by U.S. personnel. These are not outsourced. These are our employees. When I go visit with them, we sit down and talk about families. I know exactly what their problems, right? And we do midnight barbecue for the third shift, right?
Wow.
So that, they're the folks that, but, it is very hard to hire A players on third shift and second shift, especially in the security realm, which is there's scarcity of talent. So there's a battle of talent out there, and I think an enterprise is going to have a very hard time getting A players, to kind of staff all these shifts 24/7 and make sure that it's not just eyes on glass, but people that can act on the problem. It's not, there's a threat and so on, but somebody's going to be able to get in and get into the bowels of the beast and fix the problem right away before it occurs and before it's an escalation and before it's an issue that gets the attention of the media, the wrong attention of the media.
I think that was a pretty comprehensive explanation in terms of the benefits of outsourcing security. I here in the Pacific Northwest, for, you touched on this, that it's extremely hard to find talent, and the market is very, very competitive. And then what you pay for an individual or for a team versus how often you actually use them, because hopefully they're not always working at full capacity, right? Because that would mean that you have a pretty messy situation. So you only really want those, as you said, brain surgeons in places when you need an operation, right? And you don't want to pay for the rest of the time when they're not really off the clock. So that makes a lot of sense. Plus, again, you're seeing all this different signal from all your different customers, and you're able to learn from that. So, I mean, the knowledge that you acquire on a daily basis must be huge compared to an isolated enterprise. When you talk about, let's drill a little bit deeper in, and again, it does have to be specific to your customers, but let's look at a managed service environment for security. What type? I mean, you touched on some of them in terms of a zero-day threat, being able to put a response plan in place immediately. Why don't you walk us through kind of a day in a week or a week in the month of what a managed service provider will do for their customers?
Oh man, that's a fantastic question. So I will walk through what should happen, right? What should be happening. The first thing that a managed service provider should be bringing in to a new customer, let's say, or an existing customer, is an identification of the threats. And that's usually a what I would call like a professional services engagement, right? It could be lightweight if the environment is well known, or it could be, look, let's go do an in-depth study of identify what all the risks, right? The second thing, once you identify all the risk and you understand the environment very well, then you're able to come in and propose a defense, a comprehensive security solution, right? And a way to secure that environment. So that would encompass, okay, firewall management. That would encompass, setting up the infrastructure and manage it in such a way to understand what is anomalous traffic and what is normal traffic, right? So that the people that are looking at the threats coming in can identify quickly and react. This would include patching the infrastructure for threats or even for performance, right? I mean, it's the same thing. Sometimes, there are performance issues and you need to provide a patch, or it could be security. It's not always security, or it could be a feature update that you need to kind of, patch up the environment, whether it's the servers and whatnot. It is a managed services provider has people that are staffed up for every single issue that can happen at every level of competency, 24/7, holidays, weekends, it doesn't matter. And they are reacting and being proactive. So part of what we do is we have a team that is, of course, an issue happens, they're going to jump on it and resolve it. That's the reactive part. But then we have the technical account managers that are sitting down doing architecture reviews every month with the customer and giving them recommendations how to save money on their infrastructure, right, by optimizing it, how to reduce risks, or how to optimize performance, right? These are recommendations that go in every month, and what we call is a guidance level agreement. So it's past the SLA. It's not just the SLA. We're coming in and giving guidance to that customer because it's an ongoing relationship. A managed services provider, it's not like we stop whenever we do that professional services engagement. It's an ongoing relationship. We're giving recommendations constantly on how to improve security performance, or
total cost of ownership, for example. I mean, you mentioned that optimizing their performance. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and I'm assuming that if you have customers that they have on-prem infrastructure or hybrid situation, you can go ahead and take a look at what they have on-prem as well, and kind of figure out, does it make sense to shift to the cloud? Does it make sense to configure it in a different way?
100%. So we are agnostic in terms of infrastructure. We run 8 data centers in the US and Canada as well. We have a couple of overseas. So we run our own data centers. However, we also have extreme level competency in both Azure and AWS, and we're bringing up our Google capabilities. So we are definitely agnostic, and we're able to manage things that are in the public cloud, on our premises or the customer premises, and be able to give that comprehensive security solutions, endpoint protection, and then so we talked about basically identifying and securing, but then in case a breach happens, you got to be able to do disaster recovery and backup. So you got to be able to set up that, right?
Right.
And then finally, on an ongoing basis, it's kind of continuous improvement, but you got to assure that security and compliance is there. And I think that usually comes in most industries with a stamp of approval. Not necessarily compliance is not security, security is not compliance, but it is a requirement in many cases where you have to be compliant and you have to maintain it and so on and so forth. So, we bridge those kind of four angles of the security spectrum, if you will.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on compliance in a second here because it's becoming increasingly important for many different industries, and the same with security. It's tough to find people that are really experienced, especially when you want to talk about some of these industry specific requirements. But let me come back to that. In the meantime, I mean, based upon where you're sitting, again, you have all this great intel because you're dealing with so many different customers and you're receiving all this signal. What advice would you give to somebody who's running a company, 200, 300, 400 people, maybe smaller, maybe bigger, but they're aware that there are more and more risks out there. But what are some of the most concerning risks, and what advice would you give in terms of where to start, other than obviously giving you a call? I mean, where would you start?
Lots of things to do. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things to do. I mean, where to start is absolutely sitting down and having an honest discussions about identifying the risks. Every single company has assets they need to protect. Every single company in the space that you said, 400, 500 employees, they have assets to protect, and they got to be honest with themselves. The most important thing is to be introspective in terms of where the gaps are, and do that assessment, whether it's internally, externally, whether, whichever way it happens, it needs to happen. It needs to be written down. The second thing I would say, certainly, really assessing your security posture against the threat landscape that is coming up, and ensuring that you're properly secured. Third is have a disaster recovery plan, because hope and prayer is not it's just not gonna help. These things are happening. We saw what's going on with the Colonial Pipeline. We saw what happened with Kaseya. A lot of the hacks that are happening are coming through third-party software, right? So it's not necessarily your infrastructure that's directly getting hacked. It's third-party software that people are utilizing. So you got to have an inventory, and that identification phase is not just about your infrastructure, but also a complete rundown, all the software that you use, whether it's SaaS or standard software that's on-prem. You got to have a rundown of that, and then do an inventory of that, and then do an audit of that, and ask the vendors to essentially provide some answers on what are some of the security measures that would prevent a similar hack to what happened with the Colonial Pipeline, or with Kaseya or SolarWinds or whatnot. So I think these are some of the practical things that I would put up right up front.
Yeah, it's amazing that how important to have a plan in place. How important it is to have a plan in place. And if you look at the companies that have been hacked, or if you look at the bigger scenarios like this pandemic, and I always just figured that the government would have a playbook that they would pull off the shelf and go, oh, okay, we got a pandemic, okay, here's what we do. And it was pretty clear that we were missing a few pages, and every state had different pages, and it was it's really important to have the playbook. And you don't want to be running around going, okay, so let's call, who do we call now, and how do we communicate this to our employees, to our shareholders, and everything like that. Really important to have a playbook in place. And I'm assuming that's another service that you provide is here, guys, we're going to take care of the technical side. We're going to take care of this. Here's the communications that you're probably going to want to, or the messaging that you're going to want to give to your stakeholders, et cetera. Let's go back to compliance. Okay, so how do you do compliance as a service? especially when there are so many different regulatory bodies out there? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a virtual CISO type of offering. So we come in and we understand. To be frank with you, in many cases, a lot of clients don't know what they need to be, what agencies do. We still have questions like, well, we're an educational institution. We don't really need to be compliant with FERPA and this and that. It's like, yes, you do, and these are the reasons, or maybe no, you don't, but you do have to be compliant with with GDPR as an example, or whatever, right? So the first aspect is kind of really sitting down and figuring out what are the compliance aspects that they need to be to adhere to. The next thing is we put a virtual CISO engagement where we have a fractional CISO. We have a team of fractional CISOs that will come in and essentially be that voice of this is what you need to do on an ongoing basis to be compliant, and help them with the audits and help them with all the measures that need to be happening. So it is a person that they talk to that is their virtual CISO, as if they had a full-time CISO that would engage with the employees, with their employees on an ongoing basis. So it is a service. They do a monthly sit down where they do an audit, they give their recommendations, they check on progress for what the internal teams are doing, and so on and so forth. And it could be more frequent depending on the customer and the effort that is ongoing. So this is a service that we provide that is extremely popular with our customers.
Are there any compliance specific tools that you use or that you see in the market that you recommend?
Absolutely. We use certain homegrown tools internally with our customers. I mean, there's lots of checklists out there that could help, but I would emphasize a tool needs to be coupled with the brain power of a human being. It's just not going to do it all, all in its own. That's just my humble recommendation.
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily get into the tools, because you get into the tool is the tool. It's just going to have to be coupled with the right posture of the organization, and then with the right brain power to kind of drive it, essentially.
Yeah, and again, we work very closely with Microsoft, and so we're kind of, I wouldn't say partial, but that's just the area that we spend most of our time in. And they've got a tool, for example, called Compliance Manager. Sure. It doesn't do the work for you, but it does allow you to track your compliance posture across a wide variety of different regulatory bodies, which just that tracking aspect can be helpful. And then of course you can assign responsibility, et cetera. But I mean, things like that I think are helpful, because like you said before, you got to have things written down. If you think, oh yeah, I think we're compliant, yeah, it's nice to have some kind of documentation. In fact, most of the regulatory bodies, they kind of, the first step is that, where's your documentation, where's your plan, where's your gap analysis, and that. And if you have something like that in place, it helps you, I guess, if there's an incident.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. What? As we've seen with the Zoom settlement yesterday, right? $85 million because of the
tell me about that. I'm sorry, I missed that one. So tell me.
Yeah. So you've all heard of the Zoom bombings, right?
Sure.
And the security. So they've had to settle $85 million, and this is where we go. And I mean, this is what we've been preaching for years: is security has to be built into your code, like from the get-go. Right. Sec DevOps is not a innovative terms. Let's see how we do how we do it. It's gotta be done. It's a necessity now, right? So what people used to think about, like in terms of, hey, this piece of software is an asset, now very quickly can become a liability, just like what we've seen here with Zoom, right? And their settlement, right? And they have a great piece of technology that works and widely spread, and all of a sudden, because of the security hacks that they've had to settle 85. I think they just paid over $85 million in settlements, and probably it's going to keep going up. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've heard of some pretty crazy stories of school children who were traumatized by some of these Zoom bomb attacks, and this whole the pandemic in last year has been crazy in terms of how it's accelerated some business models. It's crushed other business models. I mean, if you were in the travel industry, for example, I mean, but companies like Zoom and Amazon have benefited, but then that exposed potential issues, and it just accelerated so many different things. It's really will make an interesting case study someday. Um, Last question on compliance. What are the most, I guess, the compliance or regulatory bodies that you think are companies should be most concerned with?
Um, I think if you are in healthcare, certainly it is HIPAA and high trust. That's just it's a must, and we help customers with both and becoming compliant and staying compliant with both. And we ourselves are compliant as well. Certainly, for anybody processing credit cards or touching credit cards or whatnot, it's the PCI compliance access aspects. Um, I do think like one that is not very well publicized or well known, or for educational institutions, FERPA is very important because our kids, the information about kids and students and is confidentiality of that information is as important than adults and healthcare data, right? So we got to protect the information about our kids and students in general. And I think one aspect is FERPA is not very well broadly. Broadly adopted, I would say, by a lot of educational institutions, and I think should be. And I do believe educational institutions are behind the ball in having tight security measures and compliance measures, and I think FERPA can bring that to protect the online security of kids and students in general. GDPR certainly has come in and been a major exercise for a lot of companies, and I do think that now we have states that are starting to kind of adopt similar regulations that GDPR that we're going to have to start to juggle, right? So there are states in the United States, Texas, California, whatnot, that are bringing in their own privacy rules. Now, a lot of people say, well, on the FedRAMP and FISMA side, that's all federal, and if you want to do business with the federal government, absolutely true, and that is a requirement there, and certainly it's a major hurdle if you want to do business with the government, with the federal government for that. So.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Hey, one more question related to the pandemic, and we mentioned that it accelerated a lot of different things. One of the things that accelerated was the whole remote work or work from home. What services have you provided your customers to help facilitate that whole remote work or work from home?
Yeah, for our customers, certainly, VPN services, VDI, right? Office 365 suites, roll out very quickly, or all kinds of collaboration suites, not just Office 365, but these are things that are in our product portfolio. But on top of that is making sure that we're, when we're offering customers these collaboration suites, making sure that they're secure as well. So our VDI solution is a secure VDI solution. Office 365 is a managed Office 365 solution that encompasses all aspects of security, because that's part of the issue that we're having. Phishing, helping our customers do phishing exercises to assess the competency of their organization in terms of phishing awareness and whatnot. To keep along those lines, ethical hacking, just kind of making sure that our customers are fully aware of all the risks that they are taking by pushing that perimeter all the way to the home, right? And
Sure.
So we've gone out and offered all these services, continued to offer all these services to our customers, and kind of expanded our reach there.
Excellent. Hey, I took a look at your reading list before, and we've read a lot of similar books, Good to Great, Built to Last, Seven Habits. So if you had to make a recommendation in the context of, business security, what books or sites or publications would you recommend?
Yeah, let me ask you. I also want to. How about movies to watch?
Oh, well, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting movies, and I actually wrote a blog post on that. Cybersecurity movies, for people, some of the hacker movies that we all grew up with, right? And one of them, like honestly, is maybe Independence Day, where they insert the hack to kind of blow up the alien ship, right?
Right.
There's the movie Hackers, right? There is, some, um, there's War Games, of course. I don't know
Right.
if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
That was one of the first movies that kind of stuck in my head.
Right.
That made me so, how can I say, so sensitive to the topic that, oh my goodness, like the whole thing could
Right.
collapse.
Right.
The whole IT, uh, our whole IT construct can collapse. And this was very early on, I think 1984, if I remember, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, I think these are some of my suggestions in terms of movies. In terms of books, what are your suggestions? Maybe you can help me.
No,
Maybe you can help me.
actually,
Yeah.
I think that in my experience with cybersecurity, the landscape is evolving so quickly that actually the best resources for me are on the web and then other podcasts because things are changing so quickly. So by the time a book gets out, at least the books that I've read, they tend to be a bit dated. Now, of course, there's always some fundamentals that regardless of when we're talking about, those same fundamentals apply. So, for example, some of the things that you talked about, doing an appropriate assessment, understanding what assets you need to protect, having a patch policy or patch plan in place. Those kind of things are kind of basic fundamentals that never change. But in terms of the landscape and what's out there, it basically I get everything from the web.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
Krebs on security is a good one,
yeah.
to kind of follow, of course, but that's standard. But I mean, a lot of people don't know about it. You should really be surprised. A lot of people that are, now becoming aware of the security threat. I mean, I would say the newcomers to our world are not
Right.
aware of it, and it's just a good, very simple, practical report to subscribe to. So, yeah.
Excellent. Let me ask you this. We get a lot of people who listen who are looking to find a job in the cybersecurity industry. And, there's obviously that's a very broad statement because cybersecurity can mean many different things to many different people. And there are many different roles in the industry. But what advice would you give to prospective employees or people who are looking to find work in the security industry?
Um, I would say this is a career that you're not going to need to worry about finding a job in for the next several decades. And I say that with absolute confidence. There's a shortage of talent, but not only that, there is a increased level of threat. We are not facing any more hackers in their basements. We are facing nation states that are encouraging this kind of hacking, this kind of ransomware, and it's becoming a business. Ransomware is a business now, and there are office buildings in various countries that house a hackers that come in the morning. They show up to work, and they collaborate together on how to ransomware certain companies or do certain exploits. So um, we are facing I would say, in a major um, uh, amount of work in the next several decades to combat these unethical hackers, if you will. with people that want to protect, that have a passion for protection and securing environments. Either that's part of their ethics or that's part of what they enjoy doing. But in a way, to be a cybersecurity professional, you have to also know the ways of the hackers in a way. So
Mhm.
if you've ever, and then there's the whole area of ethical hacking. So I would say this, if I was to give advice to somebody who's technically inclined, I would definitely encourage them to go pursue a career and experience in this area. A lot of it is doing things on your own as well, and trialing and erroring yourself, uh, and understanding how code works, and so that you can protect it, right? So I would say absolutely 100%, be curious, go get an education in that, but most importantly, go also get some experience and go work under the tutelage of an organization that knows how to deliver cybersecurity. Because what you will learn in the books is only a small tiny fraction, is only a small tiny fraction of what you would need to be a successful cybersecurity professional. Because a lot of it is an art, as you well said, Mark. A lot of it is also so novel that you have to be up on it. You have to be curious. You have to be up to date. You have to understand the threats, and you have to be current and interacting with the threats to be competent on it. It's just kind of like the same advice I would have given 15, 20 years ago about somebody that asked me about networking. Yes, you're going to learn a lot by studying the Cisco manual and whatnot, but you will. But it's only a fraction of what you need to manage a complex network, right? You got to have hands-on experience, and you got to have to, be apprenticed, honestly, on how to do it, so that you're not, fat fingering something and putting a bunch of users offline.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is, get an education, but more equally, or maybe more importantly, get some experience, get out there and get your feet into the pool. And I could imagine, working for a company like Ntirety, where you're doing, nothing but managing security for, hundreds of organizations across the country. Every day you're seeing different, situations, and you're having to respond. And I think that would be an ideal opportunity to just kind of, rapidly ramp up your skills. So, that all makes sense to me. It's funny, you talk about the evolving threat landscape. And even for individuals, we need to be aware. But I recently got a new credit card, and the first time I went online to pay the credit card, I went on, made my payment, and half hour later, I got an email saying that there was an issue with my account. And it was a pretty cleverly done email, right? I mean, it wasn't one of these Nigerian spam type things. It was like, it had the logo, had everything. And of course, I looked at the address, under the alias, and it was a bogus address, and it was, so somebody is sniffing something someplace, and they're aware that new account holders, email addresses, something, right? And it just came in right at that time, and I kind of don't think it was a coincidence, right? Because it was a very specific type of credit card, and I got to think that a lot of people just get caught unaware and going to go ahead and click and validate their account information. The other thing, I don't know, because I've lived off and on outside the States, so I haven't had too many phone situations, but yeah, recently I've had calls from the IRS and from the Social Security Department saying, "Oh, it was so funny. They said something like, we've frozen your Social Security number," and I'm like, I don't think you can do that. But I'm sure that you call 100 people, there's somebody's gonna be like, oh God, they froze my, So it's just creating that awareness and that extra sense of caution that we didn't have to think about when, back 15, 20 years ago. We never had to be concerned about that kind of stuff. I mean, I guess the worst thing we'd have to worry about is somebody stealing your checkbooks out of your, the mailbox or something, right? But yeah,
it's interesting. I'll tell you one interesting story. And this is a caution for all your listeners. When you have a new employee starting up, the first thing that they did to one of our new employees that just started up, very bright young lady, but she was astute enough to essentially figure it out. But this is what happened. They sent her a email, quote unquote, from me, from the CEO saying, "Can you please buy all these gift cards?" And
I've seen that one. That's crazy.
yeah, but for a new employee, they're getting an email from the CEO. Go
right?
buy these gift cards for a meeting Monday morning, yada yada yada, and then they were very belligerent with her, right? And
what are you waiting for? I told you to get out there again.
Exactly, but she had the wherewithal to essentially contact her boss. Boss contacted me, and then it was a non-issue. But I would say, this is something that, like new employee training. It needs to go in our new employee training. It's like, hey, look, most likely you're going to get phished. And our CEO would never do something like that, where they would ask you to kind of go pay out of your pocket for, for something like that, right? So, yeah.
No, but they create that sense of urgency and fear, and some people are going to respond, right? Yeah, it's scary. Well, hey, Emil, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure we could keep rattling on for quite some time here, but I know you got other things to do today. And but I've really enjoyed this, and look forward to crossing paths with you in person someday.
Same here, Mark. Yeah, I would love to see you in Austin, or I'll see you somewhere in the Pacific Northwest as well. And looking forward to listening to all your podcasts as well. And thank you so much to your listeners.
Thanks, Emil. You take care. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.